I'm Shauna Rosner, your host of In-House Counsel Chronicles, a podcast designed to chronicle the career journeys of in-house counsel so we can collectively learn from their unique paths to their in-house position, the challenges they've overcome, the milestones they have celebrated, and how they're shaping the future of law in today's rapidly changing business environment. Today, my guest is Cary Zimmerman. Cary earned her BA in political science from The Ohio State University, her JD from Case Western University School of Law in 2005, and a master's degree in finance from Weatherhead School of Management at Case Western Reserve University in 2016. Cary has worked both as in-house counsel and in private practice throughout her legal career and currently serves as Chief Legal and Compliance Officer at GBX Group, a Cleveland-based real estate investment and asset management firm focused on acquiring, preserving, and operating historic properties across the country. I'm looking forward to talking to Cary about her 21-year career journey, what it means to grow into your executive self, and her perspective on leadership, legal operations, and the future of in-house legal departments. Welcome to the podcast, Cary.
Good morning, Shauna. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
So I want to dive in by first asking you, you built a career that spans law firms, a startup, a public company, and you're now serving as Chief Legal and Compliance Officer. Looking back, it's impressive. What were the 2 or 3 pivotal moments that most shaped the trajectory of your career?
I think the inflection points for me have been when I decided to sort of step out of a comfort zone and to go broader rather than deeper. So the first one was probably after close to 10 years at Progressive. I had a very sort of safe, secure path forward there. Could have stayed forever and ever. A lot of Progressive folks do stay for decades. And I thought to myself, well, let's kick the tires here. I can do this thing for a long time going into the future, or I can sort of broaden out. So I was working primarily in like the public company, securities, corporate governance space. And I decided to branch out from there. Went to a startup. I went to a much less mature company, much smaller company. And I got to try my hand at, new stuff, basically. So that was one. And I would say the other was going into law firms. So I started my career in-house and did that for 10, 12 years. And then I moved into law firms for about 5 or 6 years. And that taught me a whole other side of the practice of law. And it gave me the chance to work with a variety of clients, as opposed to having a single client, which would be your employer at Progressive or at the startup. I got to service a number of clients with different needs. And that helped me make my resume go from more narrow and deep to wide and wide ranging in terms of the subject matter and the skills that I built.
It's so interesting because I think, most people will start at a law firm and then go in-house, and you had kind of this different trajectory. Did your career unfold the way you originally envisioned?
No. And I think that's a good thing. I'll be honest, at the outset of my career in 2005, I don't think I had a vision for 21 years later. Like, where would I be? It wasn't crystallized, at least. But I think the willingness that I had to take some chances along the way landed me in a place that I'm happy with. I'm in a leadership role. I do work that touches on a lot of different sort of business areas. I'm able to provide counsel to, executives here on a daily basis. I get to shape some of the initiatives that we launch. So it ended up, I think, in a place that's satisfying for me, even though I didn't know at the beginning exactly what it would look like.
When we spoke last week, you mentioned that concept of growing into your executive self. And I thought that was such a powerful phrase. What does that mean to you?
I've thought a little bit more about this since we spoke too. For me, the process of sort of becoming my executive self required I had to validate myself. I would say in my 20s, I sort of thought I knew what I knew, but I doubted myself a lot and maybe wouldn't speak up in meetings and wouldn't be as assertive with opinions, that were supported with logic, but I would kept them to myself. And then probably in my 30s, I started to see that a lot of what I was thinking, maybe I wasn't verbalizing, I was right on the money. I would, maybe a project would advance and I would sort of notice that my intuitions were right or my initial assessment of something was right. So then by my 40s, I have begun to trust my instinct and be more assertive because I've validated sort of, yeah, what you're thinking is right. Your instincts are on the money. And for me, that's just developed into a confidence now where I can go into almost any meeting and feel that even if I'm sort of speaking off the cuff, that my logical abilities, my track record has shown that I add value when I speak.
So it sounds to me like it was kind of like an evolution of self.
It was I was I was a pretty anxious new lawyer. You're just desperate to sort of prove yourself and have the higher ups accept you and trust you. And so it did take some time to get to the point where I trusted myself more. Right. So I prove it to them. I'm doing good work. And then it's like, wait, I could be them too. I don't need their, third party approval or imprimatur of what I'm saying or doing. And now I'm in a position where I can help develop other attorneys and other, young folks here at GBX.
Was there any specific experience that kind of forced that transition?
I would say that when I let me think about that one. The most recent sort of shift that I was forced into was when I became the CLO here at GBX, which was 2 years ago. And I had been in a place where I was supporting our CLO at the time, and certainly she, entrusted me to handle things autonomously. But then when she left, there was a whole other world of sort of responsibility that I hadn't had visibility into before that suddenly was there, and it was me and people were coming directly to me for answers on things that were brand new. So there was a year-long period of just sort of drinking from a fire hose and getting exposure to all new areas that, not only were people expecting answers, with a speed that would keep up with the pace of business, but I had to educate myself on a lot of those things at the same time. So it's like, how do you give good advice, but also quickly? And what tools do you have at your disposal? Should you use outside counsel? Is there some technological solution here that we can use to draw, information from our contracts or whatever it may be? So that was trial by fire, I would say. It's a good way of describing it.
So I want to focus in on that a little bit more. Many attorneys spend years mastering the law, but becoming a successful executive, I think you'd probably agree, requires a different skill set, right?
Yes, for sure.
What are the biggest differences you think between being a great lawyer and being a great executive who's also a lawyer?
Yeah. So I think being a good practitioner of law, it requires, strong critical analysis skills, research, writing. Do you clearly communicate and can you make a recommendation that is applying the law to the set of facts to support a business decision? Legal executive is you're helping make that business decision. And the expectation is not only do you understand how the law applies to the facts, but you're also knowledgeable about the perspectives of the other business side clients on your team that have a different objective. And so, can you think from their lens how to get their objectives met while also providing good, sound legal advice? So I think it goes just beyond here's a good legal recommendation for what's permissible or how I think we should proceed so that we're doing this in a legally sound way. But it's also like, how does this also meet the business objectives? And, what does that mean for you, CFO or, head of risk management, et cetera?
Were there skills that you had to intentionally develop, you think, to get to this executive level?
For sure. I think you have to learn how to get relationships built with your peers at the executive level. so that they're sharing information with you on a very continuous basis. It's hard to practice law in-house if you're not sort of keeping abreast of all the changes as they happen. So to enable that, you need to build the rapport with the other executives so that they feel comfortable sharing, hey, here's this new project, here's this new initiative that we want to start next year. And then you can also provide candid feedback to them, right? So if they've got maybe an unreasonable expectation for timing for some new project, and you know all the legal or regulatory elements attached to that would be very time consuming and don't line up with what they're sort of thinking, you need to be able to have that candid conversation and explain, yes, I hear you. We support this. I think this is, in support of achieving our strategic plan. But, we have to take into account these other things. And I think having those strong relationships is really a key element of that.
So I want to ask you about high performing legal teams. You've spent a significant portion of your career, I think, building and leading teams. When you're hiring or developing talent, what do you think separates good lawyers from future leaders?
Let's see here. I think table stakes is you do good legal work, right? You are thorough, you clearly communicate, you develop a recommendation, and you put that forward. It's the folks I think that can grow into more than just being a good legal practitioner, that can handle a little bit of uncertainty, right? Uncertainty doesn't scare them. I've been in several companies where there's management changes and you don't kind of know what's next. You don't know what it means for you or your group, but you kind of keep calm and carry on. I think that is a very, very critical skill to being in a leadership role. So
Makes a lot of sense. So, a lot of attorneys, I talk to, and I'm sure aspire to become general counsel or CLO one day. In your experience, how does someone earn that true seat at the executive table?
I think you need to earn the trust of the business executives in the room. And I think you need to demonstrate to them that you have the ability to see things from their perspective. So, everybody talks about corporate legal as the department of no, right? Because we're always thinking about risk. And that's what we're trained to do. That's fair. But if you can't become a lawyer who can have a conversation with the CEO, the CEO is talking about something that does entail some risk, and you can approach that conversation in a balanced way that sort of figures out the solutions to get that thing achieved while also managing the risk, you're not going to get there. I think you need to be able to say, well, the CEO's objective is this, right? He wants to grow revenue, or I should say she wants to grow revenue. And you need to be able to support that. So it's being creative as well and really understanding the perspectives of the other leaders. For sure. Yeah, and I'd add to that that you build credibility by speaking a bit of their language. I think, a lot of CEOs, CFOs, they're coming from a financial background. For me, that master's of finance was a real gateway to speaking that language. I got that degree when I was 36 years old. I was not a, young, I guess I was young, relatively speaking, but I wasn't a baby. And I learned how to read financial statements. I learned the language of finance. And so now when I'm in conversations like I was yesterday talking about a financial basically calculator that was being built in house and we were using it for certain, things, I can speak very knowledgeably about how that works. And I think that's one way of demonstrating that you understand them.
I wanted to ask you about what motivated you to get that master's in finance when you did.
So it's funny. At Progressive, I was in a great group that helped with the development every quarter of our 10Qs and our 10Ks every year, our proxy statements. And those things are chock full of financial information. We worked very closely with the accounting and financial reporting function there, our legal team did. And I would sit in these meetings with these high level leaders and felt so ignorant, right? I knew about securities law. Uh, I didn't understand what the line items on a balance sheet meant or the difference between a balance sheet, income statement, or cash flow statement. So I thought, okay, that's a gap. How do we fill that gap? And I started looking around for programs that I could finish within a relatively short period of time. I discovered that Case had this Masters of Finance program that if I hustled, I could do in, I think, a single year at the time. I had my first child in the middle of it, so it took me 2 years, but that's how I landed there. It was a great program.
It's really super impressive. It sounds like something you would recommend others to do if they're looking to progress like you did.
I would. Or if folks are listening to this, I don't know how many like undergraduates are going to hear this, but going back, I wish I had done some finance courses, accounting courses in college. I think that would have also been a great way to build this skill set that kind of encompasses not just law, but other disciplines.
I want to shift a little bit to talking about leading through change. I think over the last few years, you mentioned there's been some significant organizational team changes where you are at GBX. What has that experience kind of taught you about leadership?
I'm going to repeat what I said earlier that uncertainty is a fact of life and how you handle it is critical. So keep calm and carry on. Roles and responsibilities are going to shift. A new leader may come in and want a different makeup of the department. They may say this from a strategic perspective is a more important project than that one. And you have to be able to go with it and figure out the path forward because a lot of people freeze or get too involved with drama that arises, right? There's territorialism that can spring up when things change. I think you have to do your best to keep that to the side and say, what am I here to do today? How do I advance this group's objectives and the company's objectives? And know that it's all just a chapter
So it sounds like resilience is important
for sure.
and that you've been able to keep people motivated during those periods of uncertainty. And that's super important.
Yeah, it can be a challenge when the drama can kick up or people are worried. But I think staying connected with your team and keeping very open lines of communication that are honest about, change that's coming. I think if you have a good relationship with your team, and I'm very proud of our legal team here, it's, it's there's 6, 7 of us and we stay close. We have lunches together. We speak, to each other multiple times a day about a variety of projects. And if you have those close bonds, and the personal connections will sort of override the some of the corporate maybe change and what feels like instability.
Have you had to change your leadership style over time?
Yes. I think we're always undergoing some self-development processes, right? I think for me, it's learning the areas that are my weaknesses and getting honest with myself about those that, you know, if you don't do that, it can be career suicide. So you've always got to have that self-awareness and go like, this isn't going well for me. I need to step back, maybe take a pause and go, okay, we're going to do less of that and we're going to do more of this. But it's a dynamic situation, right? The team around you may be changing and what the company is seeking to do each year may change. So you've always got to be like reflecting on, is my leadership working in this particular, circumstance?
So it sounds like self awareness, being able to reflect, those are key.
Yeah.
I want to switch over to talk about what everyone's talking about AI. It seems to
Right.
be the center of every legal industry conversation right now. From your perspective, what should legal leaders be paying attention to in regard to AI?
Well, so at the beginning of all of the AI, let's say the emergence of all these new AI solutions, especially in the legal tech realm, I think there was a lot of excitement from a lot of people and maybe an overestimation of what the tools could do. And there was a lot of talk, at least I would hear chatter about this is going to, job replacement. I heard it framed as like a one-to-one replacement, like the tool will replace a human. And I've all along believed that that is not quite right. I do think that to stay relevant as lawyers and to be good practitioners, we have to learn how to use the tools. And that is how this is going to, you know, evolve. That these tools are here. They do amazing things. They may not be replacing bodies, right? There's still a lot of things that humans need to do, but it is incumbent upon us as lawyers to continue to understand what tools are out there and to sort of evaluate them and how they might help us do our work better or faster, and then to incorporate them into our practice. I read a really good article I think it was the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association publication that talked about the ethical implications of the use of AI in legal practice. And it did emphasize that, we're subject as lawyers to an obligation to keep current with emerging technologies that might help our practice. That includes AI necessarily, right? So that's the way I look at it is, what tools are out there. Let's always be keeping abreast of what the tools are. Let's look at them carefully and adopt them where we can. That's all with the caveat that we must understand the risks of using these tools, right? So a wholesale just adoption of, throw your questions into Copilot or Chat GPT and just copy paste into a memo. No, no, no. The user has to understand the subject matter that it's writing the prompt about so that the user can evaluate the output and determine whether the output is reliable. That's where I'm at is, you know, do I trust this tool? Did I look at that output? Did we check it to make sure that it is sound, you know, legal guidance?
I read an article similar to the one and probably read the one in the Cleveland Bar Association as well about how if attorneys don't use AI, how soon that might become they're not following the standard of professionalism that they need to, and will there be a liability?
Well, I think it's a challenging moment in time because there's so many providers of this type of tool. Randomly, my sister, who works in tech sales, is working for a legal tech solution. So she's not an attorney, but it's so funny. It's called Even Up, and it's for shout out Even Up. It is for litigators, and it assists with discovery needs. But there's so many, and as lawyers, we get, bombarded with marketing emails. And so I think we're in this period of a lot of, founders putting products out there into the market, and we have to sort of evaluate which ones are the good ones. And then I think we're going to see some industry consolidation with these legal tech providers. And so who will be the winners and who will be the losers? And are you using a tool that maybe won't be around in a few years, or will that company be acquired by another company? I think that's sort of the challenge too when we're looking at AI tools. Those are questions I'm asking, like, how old is your company? And, is it venture backed? What series are you at? I want to get a sense of longevity.
On a search to add a legal hire, I know you were really interested in somebody who had experience in using AI, welcomed AI. Was that something that was a challenge for you to have the rest of the team on board with? Or was it just adopted by everyone as something that this is what we're going to do?
I think generally, culturally here, we are sort of embracing of AI. Like I said, with that caveat that I mentioned earlier, it comes from our CEO largely. He's, believes in the power of these tools to make us more efficient. So I think it's our goal to hire people that are embracing of these technologies. And it's my personal goal to make sure that the folks that we bring onto the legal team also understand how to use them responsibly.
When you think about the future of in house legal departments, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but what do you think will look dramatically different in, let's say, 5 years from now?
Wow. Um,
Or maybe it won't be dramatically different.
I'll answer in a sort of self-interested way. We are spending a lot of time at the moment thinking about legal analytics, and what work is coming through this department, what work is getting done and how quickly and by whom. And that sort of has a legal ops sort of element to it. That's where we're spending a lot of time. It's thinking about sort of on the business rather than in the business, or on the practice rather than in the practice. I think in 5 years, we will be able to, use a variety of tools to tell us how we're doing the work and how well we're doing the work, and are we doing it as efficiently as possible. I hope that in 5 years, we got a whole bunch of processes and tools that help us do all of that.
I want to ask you about some more advice. You've given some good advice already, but if someone listening today wants to become a general counsel or a chief legal officer someday, what piece of advice would you give them?
I mean, table stakes, do good work, right? So start there and make sure that you are a good writer, you're a good communicator, and you understand the legal issues. Then the next step, or maybe concurrently with that, you understand business needs. I think lawyers can get caught up in being so proud of the legal work that they do that there's a disconnect between sort of the product they've produced, this beautiful memo, and like how the business team needs to work and what they need to move things forward. That is really critical, that if you can understand not just your job, but how what you're doing is enabling the other people in the company to produce revenue, reduce risk, whatever their roles are, that is a wonderful next step towards, leadership. And then I think too, like building the relationships with the folks that are in those leadership positions so that they see your work and they know that when you're in the meeting, you're alert, attentive, and you are adding value. You won't speak unless you've really got something that is meaningful to add to the conversation or move something forward. Those are sort of the three big things I would note for that.
Great advice. If you were to give yourself advice, looking back as an attorney who just graduated law school, what might it be, knowing what you know now?
I think I spent a lot of years, and I mentioned this earlier, being nervous that I maybe wasn't getting it right or I didn't trust my recommendations. I would tell myself to relax a little bit and to that grit takes you a long way. Just pay attention, show up. I think showing up matters so much. I think even today in this remote world, turning your computer on and conveying to the people around you that you are present and you care is humongous, quite candidly. But I think I would tell myself something along the lines of like, just keep working hard and don't doubt yourself so much. You have what it takes. Just keep putting your head down and watching the people around you and, listening. The self-awareness. That's a lot of answer. I don't I should have given you a nice little nugget, but
I agree with you on showing up, and I can relate to a lot of that advice. So I appreciate
showing
you
up,
giving it to us.
the screen on, I know that it's not always the norm, but that's a big one for me. Just put your screen on. Nobody cares what you look like. Nobody cares what your background is. What the people around you cares if you're paying attention and you're helping, right? So
Agree 100%. Thank you so much. I think this is a good point for us to end. It's been a really valuable conversation. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for being my guest today.
thank you, Shauna. I have enjoyed it as well, and I'm honored that you asked me to sit with you today and give you some insights from my path. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.